I walked into the family meeting, and my chest felt like it was about to explode. Every eye in the room flicked toward her the second we entered, loaded with expectation, dripping with assumption. They all thought she would settle, that she would nod, smile politely, and take the crumbs they tossed her way. I could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down, suffocating in its subtlety. The air itself seemed thick, heavy with whispers and those thinly veiled smirks. Every relative, every cousin, every sidelong glance felt like it was measuring her, sizing her up, counting how many steps it would take for her to fold. I noticed her hands first. Just for a split second, they trembled, an almost imperceptible crack in her otherwise unshakable composure. My heart clenched. This was rare. This was the first hint that the storm inside her was already gathering. Then Uncle Mark, as predictable as a cold winter, slid a contract across the polished table with a grin that reeked of condescension. He expected the easy answer, the quiet surrender. I caught the corners of my cousin's lips twitching, their eyes exchanging secrets in whispers. "She'll cave, she always does." That familiar phrase, coded in arrogance, hit like ice against my spine. Aunt Clara cleared her throat, a small, precise sound, and suddenly the room's chatter dulled. Her eyes met mine, sharp and commanding, silently telling me, "Watch. This is about to get interesting." Then it came. The first jab, subtle, almost casual. "Maybe you don't know your own worth." My stomach twisted. The words were carefully crafted, meant to belittle, meant to provoke, and she felt it. I could see it, yet she didn't flinch. Instead, shame and anger intertwined in her expression, a quiet storm rising behind her calm eyes. A family friend snickered, the kind of laugh that announces a victory before the game even starts. But Clara didn't move, didn't write, didn't sign. I could see the tremble in her fingers, a silent defiance. They expected capitulation, but she offered none. The room's expectations of her weakness hung in the air like a fog, dense, oppressive. Every whispered calculation in the room seemed to crumble as she held her ground. I caught her gaze again. A flicker of defiance danced there, almost playful, a spark no one in that room had seen before. She wasn't just resisting, she was already planning her counterstrike. Then came the offer, an insult wrapped in a contract, embarrassingly low, a blunt dismissal of her experience, her sacrifices, her worth. She let out a soft, almost dismissive laugh. The room sensed the spike in tension, their smug certainty beginning to fray. And I felt it too, my own anger, my pride, a slow, building fire. This wasn't just about money or recognition. It was about principle, about respect, about watching a lifetime of underestimation burn away under the precision of her strategy. This was personal, and in that moment, I knew. The game had just begun, and she was not the one who would lose. I remember the first time I truly understood what she had endured. Aunt Clara, barely out of her teens, juggling 2 jobs while carrying the weight of a family that barely noticed her effort. The sacrifices she made weren't loud or celebrated. They were quiet, invisible acts that no one appreciated. I've seen her as a child, staying up late to fix dinner, to mend a torn shirt, to make sure everyone else's comfort came before her own, and yet she was always underestimated. Throughout her life, she faced dismissal after dismissal, especially from men in positions of authority. Each rejection whispered the same message: accept less, settle, don't rock the boat. Family dinners were a constant reminder. Her ideas were brushed aside with polite nods, her voice swallowed in a chorus of louder, more confident tones. And still she persisted. I recall the countless nights she sat in solitude, scribbling strategies and plans no one imagined she had. Every calculation, every contingency, every secret note was a building block for the woman she was becoming. And yet even those she trusted could betray her. A close friend, someone she thought would support her through a difficult negotiation, turned on her, siding with the very people who sought to diminish her. But those betrayals didn't break her. They shaped her, She learned to fight smarter, not just harder. Every lesson she absorbed, every slight she endured, refined her into someone meticulous, patient, and devastatingly precise. I remember her explaining to me years ago the importance of self-worth, the necessity of negotiation, the courage to demand what was rightly yours. Back then, I nodded, half understanding. Now I feel the full weight of her wisdom. Her past is dotted with denials and failures that would have crushed anyone else. Investments rejected, promotions withheld, recognition stolen, and yet she endured. I see flashes of those private humiliations, moments that no one witnessed but that carved deep channels of anger and resolve into her. That suppressed fury, that silent indignation, has been decades in the making, a reservoir now ready to erupt with surgical precision. I can still hear her voice, soft and urgent, whispering advice that now resonates with unbearable clarity. Never let them think they can take more than you are willing to give. Every expectation that she would accept less, every dismissive glance and quiet insult has been stored, measured, and now fuels a controlled, calculated storm. The wounds of her past are no longer scars. They are the blueprints of her revenge. Every slight, every underestimated moment, every whispered betrayal has built a strategy so precise that the world will never see her weakness again. And in that revelation, I understand something I never did before: the depth of her patience, the magnitude of her resolve, and the unstoppable force she has become. Aunt Clara leaned back slightly, her eyes scanning the room with that calm precision that always unnerved me. Then she spoke, her voice steady, measured, each word chosen like a scalpel. She began her counteroffer, laying it out with quiet authority, as if the snickers and whispered doubts bouncing off the walls were irrelevant. The room shifted instantly. Eyes widened, mouths fell open in disbelief. Whispers escalated into a tense silence, heavy and expectant. Even Uncle Mark, confident as he always thought himself, leaned forward, a subtle warning creeping into his tone. Be careful, Clara. Push too far, and goodwill doesn't stretch forever. She didn't flinch. She didn't falter. Instead, she let a small, almost imperceptible smile play at the corner of her lips, her calm aura suddenly heavy, intimidating. Goodwill, she said softly, is earned, not assumed. And just like that, she reminded them, without shouting, without anger, that she had evidence to support every demand, every expectation. I watched her body language with growing awe. A tilt of her chin, a slight lift of her hand, a measured pause, tiny gestures, yet everyone screamed confidence, authority, unshakable resolve. The cousins who had whispered and snickered began shifting, unease replacing their smug certainty. Then she dropped it casually, almost offhand, a reference to contributions she had made years ago, work everyone had forgotten, sacrifices no one had acknowledged. The words landed like stones in a pond. Subtle, public humiliation for the family, a reminder they had erased her worth for too long. I noticed the tremor in Mark's confidence, the slight slackening of his jaw, the way his hand hesitated over the contract. Her control of the room was unassailable now. Her terms were fair, yet audacious, precise, yet shocking. Everyone expected less, but she demanded more, and they had no choice but to listen. Passive-aggressive comments flew, thinly veiled attempts to destabilize her, but she deflected each with surgical precision, leaving the room scrambling for footing. When she hinted at legal counsel, financial oversight, her voice was calm, almost conversational, yet every word carried weight. The shift in power was undeniable. The room wasn't judging her anymore. They were calculating, adjusting, trying to anticipate the next move from someone who had long been underestimated. And then she began exposing them. One by one, small inconsistencies, overlooked statements, tiny contradictions in their past arguments. I felt the tension rise, the emotional crescendo building like a storm about to break. Every minor victory she scored tightened the grip of inevitability. With each rebuttal, each reminder of past wrongs, she made it clear she would not back down. Not now. Not ever. And in that room, under the weight of her poise, her precision, her long-honed strategy, the entire family felt the quiet, undeniable power of a woman who had been expected to accept less and chose instead to claim everything she deserved. A phone buzzed sharply on the table, slicing through the tension like a knife. Clara's lawyer's name flashed across the screen, and with a few quiet words over the call, she confirmed what no one in that room suspected. Recent loopholes in the contract gave her leverage far stronger than anyone had imagined. I caught Mark's face blanch, his carefully curated confidence crumbling in a heartbeat. For the first time, I saw the panic he had been suppressing, the realization that he had underestimated her preparation. Aunt Clara didn't rush. She paused, letting the silence stretch heavy and suffocating, the kind that presses down on every chest in the room. Every eye was fixed on her, tension so thick it almost hurt to breathe. Then she revealed it, a shocking piece of evidence, an overlooked family asset, a mismanaged account, something so meticulously documented that no one could dismiss it. The room shifted instantly. Smug relatives faltered, pride cracking like glass. She didn't stop there. With the calm precision of someone who had replayed this moment 1,000 times in her mind, she recounted a past betrayal in vivid, unforgiving detail. The memory cut deeper than any insult, exposing the quiet treachery that had long shadowed her life. I watched the transformation inside her, humiliation transmuting into righteous, controlled power. She was no longer the woman they expected to settle. She was a force, deliberate and unstoppable. Cousins murmured apologies under their breath, stammering to save face, to reclaim some shred of dignity that had already slipped away. Aunt Clara asserted her position, voice calm, firm, every word a hammer striking the foundation of their assumptions. She showed them with chilling clarity that they had miscalculated her resolve, that every slight and every expectation of less had only sharpened her precision. The energy in the room shifted. She was no longer negotiating. She was orchestrating justice. I could feel it vibrating through the walls, through the stunned faces, through the tight grip of silence that bound them all. I noticed her small smirk, barely perceptible as she signaled her final terms, the ultimate reversal of expectation. The power had shifted completely. They could sense it, and yet they were powerless to stop it. The room held its collective breath, suspended in awe and fear. They realized it fully now. She would get more than anyone had ever imagined, and this time no one would stand in her way. Clara laid out her final negotiation terms with unshakable precision, every clause airtight, every contingency accounted for. There was no room for loopholes, no place for missteps. Every detail designed to secure the maximum advantage she had earned and deserved. The family predictably tried to counter, offering timid objections and half-formed arguments. She dismantled each one with quiet authority, layering fact over fact, punctuated by subtle mockery that left no doubt who held the upper hand. I felt the cinematic tension tighten in the room with every sharp retort, every calm refusal, a masterclass in controlled power. Then she did something bold. Publicly, almost casually, she reminded everyone of her contributions, the sacrifices they had ignored, the work they had dismissed. Years of neglect transformed into a stage for their humiliation, delivered without malice, yet cutting sharper than any insult they had ever thrown at her. Mark tried to regain control, his voice rising, hands gesturing for authority that was already slipping through his fingers. But her logic, precise and unyielding, collapsed his arguments like a house of cards. Cousins scrambled, whispering excuses, stammering to justify assumptions that had failed them. Yet her piercing gaze left them frozen in the truth they could not deny. She referenced legal notices with a serene calm that belied the gravity of the threat. The room shifted. Fear, awe, and respect mingled in the silence. Aunt Clara pressed forward, negotiating for recognition, respect, and material compensation, demanding far more than anyone expected, yet framing it as entirely reasonable, entirely deserved. Nah? The room went quiet, stunned into stillness. No one had anticipated this level of execution, this blend of strategic brilliance and emotional precision. I felt her triumph like a wave, the deep release of decades of suppressed humiliation washing over her, over me, over the memory of every slight endured. She ensured the victory was permanent, contracts signed, public acknowledgement secured, financial fairness undeniable. The emotional confrontation reached its peak when she made a subtle gesture, a slight nod, a measured smile, that humiliated the patriarch without cruelty, asserting her authority while preserving dignity. I watched her close the deal, her composure unbroken, her intelligence on full display. The room sat in awe, the weight of her control undeniable. The cinematic crescendo of her revenge peaked, every insult repaid, every slight corrected, every expectation shattered. Revenge was complete, elegant, and indisputable, a lesson long overdue, delivered with precision, and finally, fully realized. The room slowly emptied, the tension lingering like smoke, relatives whispering in disbelief, their voices low, uncertain, as if afraid to break the fragile calm that now hung over the house. Aunt Clara and I shared a quiet glance, victorious yet understated. No words passed between us. The look alone carried the weight of triumph, of every insult repaid, every expectation shattered. I thought about justice, how it could be silent, almost invisible, yet devastatingly effective, how the right moves, the right timing, could undo years of disrespect without a single scream. Her victory was more than financial, it was profoundly personal. She had reclaimed her dignity, restored her worth in a world that had long tried to diminish it. I noticed the subtle shifts around us. Relatives who had once dismissed her now regarded her with newfound respect, grudging admiration coloring their expressions. Clara allowed herself a brief, private moment of acknowledgement, a flicker of vulnerability passing through her eyes. I saw the toll the battle had taken, the strain behind the calm mastery she displayed all day. Yet that strength transformed instantly into empowerment, a living lesson in restraint, strategy, and quiet authority. The family absorbed it without a word, learning the gravity of underestimating someone like her. Boundaries were subtly reinforced, family dynamics shifting imperceptibly but irrevocably. Her authority was cemented, respect, once withheld, now quietly given. The humiliation of others lingered, but she balanced it with grace. No excess cruelty, no petty vindictiveness, only the exposure of their miscalculations and their prideful errors. I felt it, the personal growth, the closure that had been denied to us for years, tension that had simmered silently for decades finally eased. She reminded me, as if reading my thoughts, preparation, patience, and self-worth are the true weapons of quiet revenge. The emotional weight lightened. We stepped away from the battlefield together, stronger, wiser, vindicated, carrying with us the undeniable truth. She had won, and no one would ever underestimate her again. I looked straight into the camera, my voice tight with emotion, trembling just enough to carry the weight of every injustice endured. Sometimes the world expects less, but you can demand more, I say, letting the words hang, heavy and unyielding. I recount every moment of that cinematic tension, from the whispered insults to the sharp retorts, from the rising panic to the final revelation. I want viewers to feel the shame, the anticipation, the shock, and finally the triumph as if they were in the room with us. I stress the importance of preparation, of understanding your worth, of never allowing anyone to define your limits. Every gesture, every calculated move by Clara becomes a lesson in strategy and patience. The public humiliation of the oppressors is subtle but undeniable, a display of restraint, intelligence, and precise timing. I pause, letting the gravity of her strategy sink in. Revenge can be elegant, controlled, and devastatingly effective. I reflect on personal growth. Knowing resilience isn't merely surviving, it's orchestrating your own justice, commanding respect without losing your dignity. I encourage viewers to never underestimate themselves or anyone society has written off. Hidden lessons linger in every decision. Patience, timing, and emotional control are just as vital as courage. The camera follows Clara one last time as she walks away, every step measured, dignified, triumphant, unstoppable. The room, the family, the world. They can witness her power, but never touch it. I close with a firm, compelling call to action. If you felt that power, that justice, hit like, subscribe, and remember, never accept less than you deserve.